The metal walls of Earth's Global Defense Command hummed with nervous energy as Captain James stared at the message playing across his screen for the fifth time. His coffee had gone cold, forgotten in the shock of what he was reading. The transmission had appeared exactly 3 hours ago, bypassing every security system humanity had built, appearing simultaneously on every major communication device across the planet. This is a notice of evaluation. The message read in perfect English, though it had appeared to everyone in their native language. Your species has reached the threshold of examination. James ran his hand through his graying hair, a habit he'd developed over 20 years of military service. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this moment. The message was unlike anything they'd encountered in humanity's brief ventures into space. "Captain, sir." Lieutenant Reed burst through the door, her usual calm demeanor shattered. "We're detecting massive objects at the edge of the solar system." They just appeared. James followed her to the command center, where the main screen showed what looked like stars moving against the background of space. But these weren't stars. The objects were ships, each one larger than Earth's moon. "Get me the president," James ordered, his voice steady despite the weight settling in his stomach. As they waited for the connection, more details about the mysterious message filtered in from around the world. The beings identified themselves as the Watchers, a species so ancient they had witnessed the birth of galaxies. They claimed to have guided the evolution of intelligent life throughout the universe, testing each species as they reached the stars. Some passed. Many failed. The consequences of failure were left ominously unclear. "Captain James," the president's voice crackled through the speakers. "I assume you're seeing what we're seeing." "Yes, Mom." "The ships are holding position just beyond Mars' orbit. No signs of hostile intent. But—" he paused, choosing his words carefully. "Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen. Our best weapons would be like throwing stones at a battleship." The command center fell silent as new data appeared on their screens. The Watchers were transmitting detailed histories of other civilizations they had tested. Some had risen to join them as guardians of order. Others had been redirected in their development, a phrase that sent chills down James's spine. Over the next few hours, Earth's governments scrambled to form a unified response. The public was in turmoil, some celebrating the proof of alien life, others stockpiling supplies for what they feared would be the end of the world. Dr. Miller, head of Earth's Theoretical Physics Division, arrived at the command center with startling news. "Captain," she said, her eyes bright with a mix of fear and excitement, "I've analyzed their message. The language they're using. It's not just communication. It's carrying astronomical amounts of data in its structure. They're showing us exactly what they're capable of." James looked at the seemingly simple text again. "And what are they capable of?" "They've mastered forces we've only theorized about. They can manipulate space, time, and matter at will. These beings, they're as close to gods as anything we've ever encountered." The room grew heavy with this information. Humanity had just begun to reach for the stars, and now they were faced with beings who could reshape reality itself. A new message appeared on their screens. "Your evaluation begins in 3 rotations of your planet. Prepare your representatives." "What do they want?" Lieutenant Reed whispered, but no one had an answer. James stood at the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that suddenly seemed precious and fragile. Humanity had faced countless challenges in its rise from caves to the stars. They'd overcome ice ages, plagues, wars, and their own destructive nature. But this was different. This was a test they couldn't afford to fail. As night fell over the command center, emergency meetings were being held in every capital city. Scientists pored over the data hidden in the Watchers' messages. Military leaders assessed their options, though all knew their weapons would be useless. Religious leaders sought meaning in ancient texts, looking for any mention of these godlike beings. But Captain James knew that humanity's greatest test wasn't just about power or knowledge. As he watched the first stars appear in the darkening sky, He realized that what was truly being tested was something deeper, something that had driven humans to climb mountains, cross oceans, and reach for the stars even when those dreams seemed impossible. The Watchers might have the power of gods, but they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. And in 3 days, they would learn why. 3 days passed like a blur. The massive ships of the Watchers hung in space like new constellations, visible even during daylight. When the time came, their message appeared just as the first one had, on every screen across Earth. Your first trial begins, the message stated. Solve the equation that predicts the end of all things. In the main hall of the Global Science Center, Dr. Miller stared at the stream of numbers and symbols flooding her screen. Around her, 100 of Earth's best mathematicians and physicists worked frantically, their fingers flying over keyboards, their voices rising in frustration. "This is impossible," one scientist shouted, throwing his papers to the floor. "The equation contradicts itself." Dr. Miller sipped her tea, her eyes never leaving the screen. Something about the equation bothered her, not its complexity, but its perfect symmetry. After working with the chaos of quantum mechanics for 20 years, she had learned that the universe was never perfectly ordered. "Captain James," she called out to the military observer, "I need to know something. In all the historical records the Watchers sent us, has any civilization ever solved this?" James checked his tablet. "No, they all tried to solve it as written." A small smile crossed Dr. Miller's face. "That's what I thought. We're not supposed to solve it. We're supposed to find what's wrong with it." The room fell silent. Dr. Miller walked to the main display board and began writing, her chalk scratching against the surface. "Look here," she said, pointing to a section of the equation. "The Watchers are immortal beings. They think in terms of perfect order, perfect endings. But the universe isn't perfect. It's beautiful because of its chaos." She started making corrections, her hand moving faster as understanding dawned. "They've assumed a universe that ends in perfect entropy. But that's impossible. Quantum fluctuations would prevent it. The equation isn't just unsolvable. It's wrong." The other scientists gathered around, their eyes widening as they saw what she meant. Soon, the room buzzed with new energy as they worked together to rebuild the equation, this time accounting for the universe's inherent randomness. Hours passed. The sun set and rose again. Coffee cups piled up as the team refined their work. Finally, Dr. Miller stepped back from the board, her clothes wrinkled, her hair a mess, but her eyes shining. "Send it," she said. Captain James transmitted their response to the Watchers. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, a new message appeared. Unexpected. "You have not solved our equation. You have improved it." The room erupted in cheers, but Dr. Miller remained quiet, watching the screens. She knew this was just the beginning. The next message from the Watchers confirmed her fears. "Your species sees patterns we did not anticipate. Your chaotic nature has advantages we had not considered. But seeing flaws is not enough. Your second trial will test your ability to achieve unity in discord." In the command center, Captain James received reports of strange structures appearing across the globe. Massive crystalline towers that seemed to defy physics. Each one pulsed with energy, creating patterns that made no sense to human instruments. "They're testing our ability to work together," Dr. Miller said, studying the readings. "But they're doing it in a way that proves they still don't understand us. They think unity means everyone thinking the same way." James looked at her. "And that's not what human unity means." She shook her head. "Humans are messy, Captain. We argue, we disagree, we see things differently. But that's our strength. We just proved that with the equation. Our different perspectives let us see what immortal beings couldn't." Outside the window, the crystal towers glowed brighter, their energy patterns becoming more complex. Earth had passed the first trial, but the second would test not just their intelligence, but their very nature as human beings. "Get me Commander Stone," James ordered. "If we're going to face this trial, We need someone who knows how to turn chaos into strength." As the call went out, Dr. Miller returned to her equations. She had a feeling they would need science and strategy both to face whatever the Watchers had planned next. The game was just beginning, and humanity was playing for its very existence. Commander Stone arrived at the Global Defense Command as the Crystal Towers entered their second day of operation. Unlike the other military leaders who wore their medals and ribbons proudly, Stone kept his uniform simple. He had spent 30 years bringing different military forces together, and he knew that sometimes the less you showed off, the more people listened. "The towers are transmitting something," he said, studying the patterns on the main screen. "Not messages, more like a rhythm." Dr. Miller nodded. "Each tower beats to its own pattern. No two are the same, but they're all affecting each other. The energy fields are starting to overlap." The Watchers' second trial had turned Earth into a giant experiment. 12 crystal towers, each one placed in a different country, each one producing waves of energy that made nearby technology go crazy. Cars stopped working. Phones died. Only the most basic equipment still functioned near the towers. "They want us to make the towers work together," Stone said, "but they put them in countries that often disagree. Russia, America, China, India." He pointed to the map. "They're testing if we can cooperate." Captain James walked in, looking tired but determined. "We've got another problem. The energy patterns are growing stronger. If we don't figure this out in 48 hours, the towers will overload. Our scientists say that could tear the planet apart." Stone stood at the window, watching the nearest tower pulse with blue light. "Get me a direct line to every military commander near a tower," he ordered. "And find me people who study music." "Music?" James asked. "These patterns remind me of something I saw in Indonesia. Different gamelan orchestras, each playing their own rhythm, but coming together to make something bigger." Within hours, the command center had turned into a strange mix of military personnel and musicians. Dr. Miller worked with composers to analyze the energy patterns, while Stone talked with commanders from around the world. "The towers aren't meant to play the same tune," a music professor explained, waving her hands like a conductor. "They're meant to complement each other, like different instruments in an orchestra." Stone understood. The Watchers thought humans would try to force all the towers to sync up, to beat as one. But that wasn't the human way. Each country needs to work with their tower's natural rhythm. Stone announced to the global conference, "Don't fight it. Make it part of something bigger." Not everyone liked this plan. Some leaders wanted to try forcing their towers to match the others. Some didn't trust their neighbors to do their part. But as the hours ticked by and the energy levels kept rising, they ran out of options. One by one, teams around the world began working with their towers instead of against them. They used local instruments to match the tower's frequencies, creating harmonies that seemed to calm the energy pulses. In India, classical musicians played with their tower's rhythm. In Russia, a military choir sang in harmony with their tower's pulse. Dr. Miller watched the energy readings in amazement. The towers are connecting, but not by forcing themselves to be the same. They're creating harmony through difference. With 6 hours left before overload, the tower's lights changed from blue to gold. Their rhythms, still different, now worked together in a complex pattern that made the very air hum with energy. Instead of fighting each other, they strengthened each other. The Watcher's message appeared. Unexpected resolution. You create unity while maintaining diversity. This defies standard patterns. Stone smiled. That's humanity for you. We're messy, we argue. We're all different. But when we need to, we can make those differences work together. As the tower's light faded, returning to their normal blue glow, Captain James received another message from the Watchers. Your final trial approaches. You have shown intelligence and cooperation. Now you must demonstrate wisdom, through sacrifice. The room grew quiet. They had passed 2 trials, but something in the word sacrifice made everyone uneasy. The Watchers had tested their minds and their ability to work together. What would they ask humanity to give up in the final test? Stone looked at James and Dr. Miller. Whatever they ask, he said, we face it together. Different drums, same army. Outside, the towers pulsed steadily, now beating in a complex but harmonious pattern, a symbol of humanity's strength through diversity, and a reminder that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. Professor Ray's hands trembled as he read the Watcher's final challenge. After 2 days of studying the message, the old historian had finally understood what the alien beings wanted, and it filled him with dread. They want us to destroy our quantum computers, he told the Emergency Council. All of them. Every piece of advanced technology we've created in the last decade. The council room erupted in protests. These computers had revolutionized medicine, solved climate problems, and opened new paths in space exploration. They represented humanity's greatest technological leap forward. There's more, Professor Ray continued, his voice cutting through the noise. They want us to stop all research into artificial intelligence and advanced quantum physics. They say it's for our own protection. Captain James sat silently, watching Dr. Miller's face grow darker with each word. She had helped develop many of these technologies. Commander Stone stood by the window, his expression unreadable. Protection from what? James finally asked. From ourselves, they claim. Professor Ray pulled up ancient texts on his tablet. I've been studying the histories they sent us of other civilizations, reading between the lines. This isn't just a test of wisdom. It's about control. Dr. Miller stepped forward. The equation from the first trial. It wasn't just about physics, was it? No, Ray agreed. When you found the flaw in their equation, you did more than solve a puzzle. You proved humans could think beyond a Watcher's limits. They're not testing us. They're containing us. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Watchers weren't gods guiding younger species. They were gatekeepers, preventing others from reaching their level of advancement. Commander Stone turned from the window. How many civilizations actually failed their tests? And how many were simply too promising, too innovative? Dr. Miller rushed to her computer, pulling up data from the previous trials. Look at this pattern. Every species that showed unusual progress, they all faced this same choice. Give up their most advanced technology or face judgment. And those who gave it up, James asked, their development slowed to a crawl. They're still out there, still advancing, but at a pace the Watchers can control. Professor Ray nodded grimly. The Watchers aren't gods. They're the galaxy's oldest civilization, yes, but they're afraid of being surpassed. The council debated through the night. Some argued for compliance. Better to survive with less technology than risk extinction. Others demanded resistance, saying humanity would rather face judgment than give up their future. As dawn broke, Captain James stood before the global broadcast system. The Watchers had given them 24 hours to comply. Humanity had to choose. The technology they want us to destroy. He asked Dr. Miller, how close are we to understanding their level of science? She smiled slightly. Closer than they realize. The quantum computers they fear, they're helping us decode the very principles the Watchers use to travel between stars. Give us a few more years. James nodded. That's what they're afraid of. The council reached their decision as the sun rose. James faced the cameras, knowing his words would reach every human on Earth and the Watchers above. We've spent our history reaching for the stars, he began. Every step forward came with risks. Fire could burn us, but we mastered it. The sea could drown us, but we crossed it. Space could kill us, but we're learning to live in it. We didn't come this far by stepping backward. He paused, looking up at the sky where the Watchers' ships loomed. Humanity respectfully declines to destroy our technology. We choose progress with all its dangers over safety with all its limits. The response was immediate. The Watchers' ships began to move, their massive forms blocking out the stars. But something else was happening too. Other ships appeared, smaller, different designs, Ships from other civilizations, breaking centuries of isolation. Professor Ray's computer blinked with new messages. They're from other species, he said, his voice filled with wonder. Other civilizations that passed the previous trials. They say humanity has done what they could not. We've exposed the Watcher's true purpose. Commander Stone smiled grimly. Then let's show them what happens when you try to cage humanity. The final trial had become something else entirely. Not a test of wisdom through sacrifice, but a test of courage through defiance. And humanity had chosen to stand their ground. Admiral West stood on the bridge of Earth's first faster-than-light ship, the Defiance, watching alien vessels gather around Earth. After humanity's refusal to destroy their technology, everything had changed. The Watcher's hold on the galaxy was cracking. Another ship dropping out of light speed, his sensor officer reported. Design matches the Blue Star species. They're requesting to join the coalition. West nodded. In the week since Earth's defiance, ships from 24 alien civilizations had arrived. Each one had faced the Watcher's tests. Each one had given up their most promising technologies, and each one had regretted it ever since. In the ship's conference room, Captain James and Dr. Miller met with representatives from these species. Some looked almost human, others were wildly different, but all shared the same fire in their eyes, the desire to break free from the Watcher's control. Our people have waited 300 years to reclaim our quantum research, a tall, crystalline being said, its voice translated by Dr. Miller's latest invention. The Watchers told us it would destroy us. Instead, their restrictions nearly destroyed our civilization. Another alien, a small creature that floated in a bubble of green gas, spoke next. We developed organic computers that could think like living beings. The Watchers made us destroy them all. They said we weren't ready. James spread out the data they'd gathered. The Watchers haven't guided our civilizations. They've been holding us back, keeping us from competing with them. On the main screen, Professor Ray shared his latest discoveries. I've analyzed records from 50 different species. The pattern is clear. Any civilization that showed too much promise, too much innovation, faced harder and harder tests until they either gave up their advances or were, he paused, removed from the galaxy. But now something new was happening. Humanity's refusal to submit had sparked hope in species that had lived under the Watcher's shadow for thousands of years. Dr. Miller's quantum computers had already helped 3 species recover lost research. Commander Stone was coordinating defense strategies with alien military leaders. The Watchers are moving, West announced, drawing everyone's attention to the tactical display. The massive ships that had hovered over Earth were spreading out, calling in more of their kind from distant parts of the galaxy. They're preparing to make an example of us, James said grimly. Show the galaxy what happens to species that resist. But the Watchers had miscalculated. Their show of force didn't create fear, it created unity. More ships arrived every hour. Species that had been ancient enemies now shared technology and strategies. The very diversity that the Watchers had tried to suppress became strength. In the science lab, Dr. Miller worked with alien scientists, combining their knowledge. The Watcher's power comes from technology, not godhood, she explained. Very advanced technology, but still bound by the laws of physics. Laws we're beginning to understand. Professor Ray burst into the lab, his eyes wide with excitement. The Blue Star species just shared their historical records. The Watchers weren't the first civilization in the galaxy. They were just the ones who decided to control all the others. There were others before them, species that reached even greater heights. Before the Watchers destroyed them, James asked. No, Ray grinned. Before they left the galaxy entirely. The Watchers aren't gods. They're not even the most advanced species possible. They're just bullies who stayed behind to control everyone else. Admiral West called an emergency meeting. The Watchers had issued their ultimatum. Earth had one day to destroy its technology and accept their guidance or face extinction. But now, looking at the fleet of Allied ships surrounding his own, West felt something he hadn't expected: hope. They wanted us divided and weak, he told the assembled leaders of 50 species. Instead, they united us. They tried to suppress our differences, but those differences have made us stronger together than any single species could be alone. On screens across the Coalition fleet, the Watchers' ships grew closer. They had come to crush a rebellion. Instead, they had sparked a revolution. The final battle for the galaxy's future was about to begin, and humanity, the species that dared to defy gods, would lead the charge. The Watchers struck at dawn. Their massive ships darkened Earth's skies, their weapons turning the upper atmosphere into sheets of fire. But the Coalition fleet was ready. Ships from 50 different species moved in perfect coordination, each using their unique technologies in ways the Watchers had never seen. Blue Star Fleet, take the left flank, Admiral West commanded from the Defiance. Crystal Mine ships, protect our center. Earth vessels, prepare to test Dr. Miller's theory. The theory had come from weeks of desperate research. Dr. Miller and Professor Ray had worked with alien scientists, studying every scrap of data about the Watchers' technology. What they discovered changed everything. The Watchers aren't separate beings anymore, Dr. Miller explained during the final briefing. They've linked their minds to their ships, becoming one with their machines. It made them powerful, but it also made them vulnerable. In the Defiance's engine room, she watched the quantum computer run its calculations. The machine was detecting patterns in the Watchers' energy fields, patterns that looked remarkably like brain waves. Their greatest strength is their greatest weakness, Professor Ray added, pointing to the data. They think as one mind, move as one force. They'd forgotten how to handle chaos. Above Earth, the battle raged. The Watchers' weapons were devastating, but they couldn't handle the unpredictable tactics of the Coalition. Each species fought differently, creating confusion in the Watchers' unified strategy. They're trying to adapt, Commander Stone observed from his tactical station. But they're too slow. They have to agree on every change as a group. Captain James watched the battle screens, remembering how this all started. A simple warning message, a test that was supposed to prove humanity's worth. Instead, it had exposed the lies that had controlled the galaxy for millions of years. Dr. Miller, he called over the ship's comm. Are you ready? In the engine room, Miller made final adjustments to her device, a quantum transmitter built with technology from a dozen different species. Ready, Captain. But we'll only get one shot at this. The device was their secret weapon. Based on the same principles as the Watchers' own technology, it was designed to disrupt their unified consciousness. But using it would require getting dangerously close to their main ship. All ships, execute pattern chaos, Admiral West ordered. The Coalition fleet erupted into what looked like random movement. Ships darted in different directions, each following their own unique attack plan. To the Watchers' unified mind, it was like trying to predict 1,000 different storms at once. They're falling for it, Stone reported. Their formation is breaking up. The Watchers' ships began to separate, trying to chase down individual threats. Their perfect unity became their undoing as their single mind struggled to fight battles on too many fronts. Now, West commanded. The Defiance shot forward, protected by waves of allied ships. The Watchers' main vessel loomed ahead, a structure the size of a small moon, glowing with energy that had cowed civilizations for millions of years. In the engine room, Dr. Miller activated her device. The quantum transmitter hummed to life, sending out waves of energy that matched the Watchers' brain patterns, but with a crucial difference. We're not trying to override their unity, she explained as the device powered up. We're reminding them of what it means to be individual. The effect was immediate. The Watchers' ships began to move erratically. Their perfect formation dissolved into confusion as millions of linked minds suddenly remembered what it meant to think for themselves. It's working, Professor Ray shouted, watching the readings. Their neural network is breaking down. They're remembering who they used to be. Through the Defiance's view screen, They watched the Watcher's main ship pulse with strange light. Inside, millions of minds that had been one for countless ages were awakening to their own thoughts, their own identities. The battle hung in balance. Earth's fleet and their allies held position, watching as the giants who had controlled the galaxy faced their greatest fear, the return of individual thought, of chaos, of change. The breaking point had come. But no one knew if the Watchers would emerge from this transformation as allies or even greater enemies. The massive ship of the Watchers hung silent in space, its glow fading and brightening like a heartbeat as millions of minds struggled with their newfound individuality. On the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's leaders waited with their alien allies, watching history unfold. Energy levels are stabilizing, Dr. Miller reported, studying her readings. Their neural network isn't collapsing, it's transforming. They're learning to be both one and many at the same time. The main screen lit up with a transmission. Unlike the Watcher's previous messages, this one felt different, less cold, less certain, more alive. We remember, the voice said, struggling with singular and plural pronouns. We remember who we were before. Each of us. All of us. Captain James stepped forward. And who were you? Explorers. Dreamers. Like you. We reached for the stars and found wonders. But we feared the chaos of multiple species growing, competing, possibly fighting. We thought unity was the only answer. We forgot that diversity breeds strength. Professor Ray checked his historical records. The species that left the galaxy, you knew them. They were our friends, the Watchers replied. They invited us to go with them, to explore beyond the galaxy. But we chose to stay, to guide younger species. Guide became control. Control became imprisonment, for them and for ourselves. Admiral West kept the Coalition fleet ready, not yet willing to trust this sudden change. But Commander Stone saw something in the way the Watchers' ships moved, like dancers learning to move independently while still part of the same dance. The Watchers continued. Your quantum device didn't just remind us of our individuality. It showed us a better way. Unity without uniformity. Harmony without sameness. The very thing we saw humans achieve with the Crystal Towers. Dr. Miller looked at her device readings in amazement. They're stabilizing. Each ship, each mind is becoming distinct while maintaining a connection with the others. They're finding balance. Suddenly, the space around Earth lit up with new energy signatures. Ships appeared from all corners of the galaxy. More species arriving, drawn by the news of humanity's stand against the Watchers. We cannot undo millions of years of control in a moment, the Watchers said, but we can begin. Each species we held back must be free to grow, to advance, to find their own path among the stars. Captain James exchanged looks with the Coalition leaders. And how do we know we can trust you? You don't, they replied. Trust must be earned. But we offer this as a start. The Watcher's main ship opened, revealing technologies beyond anything the Coalition had seen. But more importantly, it shared knowledge. The true histories of the galaxy, the locations of ancient ruins and artifacts, the secrets they had hidden for so long. We will not be your gods or your guides, the Watchers said, but perhaps in time, we can be your equals, your allies in exploring what lies beyond our galaxy. Professor Ray was already studying the historical data, the species that left. According to this, they found doorways to other galaxies, whole new realms to explore. And now all species can choose their path. Admiral West realized, stay and build here or venture out there. In the following days, a new Galactic Council formed, not ruled by the Watchers, but made up of representatives from all species. Some of the Watchers chose to separate completely from their collective, while others maintained a looser connection, showing that even among themselves, diversity could thrive. Earth, the planet that had dared to defy gods, became a symbol of something new, a place where different species could meet, share ideas, and dream of new frontiers. Captain James stood with Dr. Miller, Commander Stone, and Professor Ray, watching ships of all shapes and sizes move peacefully around Earth's orbit. "So what happens now?" Stone asked. Miller smiled. "Now we do what humans have always done. We explore, we learn, we grow, and we remember," James added, "that the greatest strength isn't in being the most powerful, but in being brave enough to question, to change, and to help others do the same." Above them, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the galaxy itself was celebrating. The age of false gods had ended. The age of endless possibilities had begun. And humanity, the species that dared to think differently, had helped make it possible.